shout of triumph, rapture we shall be, rising through the clouds to glory, for Jesus we shall see.
Welcome to the Voice of Triumph with Roger R. Woodard, Senior Pastor of Family Worship Center located in Kings Mountain, North Carolina. Pastor Woodard's ministry is reaching a hurting world with the life-changing message of Jesus Christ. Now, from Kings Mountain, North Carolina, here is Pastor Roger R. Woodard.
Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which are to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. And I'm quoting that because I marked my Bible wrong. I don't want to make any of you angry. I know many of you have different political views than I do. But you can't alter the truth that Christianity has been under siege in our country. And every day I open up the headlines, we are being attacked. Now I know we have a leader at present that speaks highly of Christianity, but there is a bureaucracy that runs the country, really runs the country, no matter who's in the White House. Their policies don't change much. And if you're not paying attention, then you don't know the war. I remember Doug Weed. You see him occasionally on the networks. Doug is an Assembly of God minister, a layman, who served in the first Bush administration. And I saw him one night in California when we were there, being interviewed by Dwight Thompson. And he was talking about why he left the White House and why he got out of government. He said, because there's people there that hate Christianity. And I never will forget what Dwight asked him. He said, well, don't you think if we could just sit down with these people and explain to them who we are and what we're about, that we could change their mind? I will never forget what the man said. He said, I went to Washington believing that. He said, I no longer believe that. He said, these people are working 24/7 to destroy the influence of Christianity in America. They hate us. They don't just dislike us. They hate us. And when you look at the craziness, fellow Californians, there's a bill afoot in our old state to ban the Bible. You say, well, that's the nutty Californians. Listen, I know that, and you got a fruitcake for a governor. But God's got a lot of good people out there. Some of them sitting over here, and one's up here. God's got a lot of good people, just not enough of them to overcome the liberal influence that's destroying a great state. But if you think that the mentality of those people in California who are pushing that agenda isn't held high by a lot of people across the country, you're misinformed. We are in a battle for the very soul of our nation, and we're losing. When God spoke to me after the last election, and it wasn't just to me, I've heard others say it since, I have given you a narrow window of opportunity. And he emphasized the narrow window. To do what? Not to relax and breathe easy and take it easy, but to intensify your efforts to do what I put you on this planet to do. Whatever you are in your vocation, that's not your first purpose. You are a child of God, salt and light, for the purpose of being illuminating to dark areas the glory of the Lord. literally, as Jesus revealed his Father to this world, he called us in the 20th chapter of John to, so send I you, as my Father sent me. We're here to reveal the glory of Christ to those around us. We talk about, I will tell the world. Most of us will never get a chance to tell the world. Just tell your world. And how do I tell it? Live righteously, soberly, godly in this present world, and your light cannot be missed because you only have a short time to do it. These people are getting organized. They are crazy as a Bessie bug. And I hate to use that name because my mother's name was Bessie. And there is absolutely no low to which they will stoop to destroy righteousness in this country. And I don't have time to catalog all of that. Just take it to the bank, and if you doubt me, get informed. We're going to be tried by fire, and that doesn't sound like it's such a truism for the American church. One of the reasons we're asleep at the switch. There's nobody trying to keep us from gathering to worship today. We come here, we worship how we want to. It wasn't always that way in America. In the early days of Pentecost, they burned the churches down. And others, they disassembled it plank by plank. They jailed the preacher and some of the members. They even blocked their way with shotguns and said, your religion will never cross this creek. You say, well, that was in the early days. Well, yeah, but in Kennesaw, Georgia in the 50s, they turned the water hoses on a holiness meeting going on there and beat people up because this message is hated. The message of holiness, the message of the Pentecostal power is hated. The world doesn't hate religion. They got lots of it. They just hate the truth. And it lulled some people to sleep because that persecution, like's going on in the Middle East and has gone on through the centuries for those who truly love the Lord, has not come to this generation. But if Jesus tarries, it will come. And it's going to cost you something to stand for the Lord. In Daniel 3, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold. Its height was 90 feet high and 9 feet tall. It had to be an impressive figure. And he got all full of himself and said, whatever, with a Satan motivated to say, everybody's going to bow down and worship this image. And all these nations and languages and people who had their own gods, but they didn't know the true God. So since they didn't have the true God, it was no big challenge for them to obey. Play the music. Let me just stop here to tell you, it matters whose tune you dance to. It matters. As old James L. Slay said when he was a boy at home, his job was to slop the hogs. For those city people don't know what that is, I can't help you there. But they kept the slop bucket on the back porch. And he said, my job was to grab it and go slop the hogs. And he said, those hogs, he said he would curl the nose hairs in my nose. Stink so bad, but those hogs would just go crazy. He said, when I pour that slop, they'd jump all over one another, just can't wait to eat it. And he said, you can tell what you are by what you like. And that's a truism that still holds true today. You want to know where your allegiance is? You want to know where your God is? What turns you on? What turns you off? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? Where do you spend your money? Where do you spend your time? You'll know where your God is. That's good preaching, Roger. My goodness. Huh? But here in this society, surrounded by all kind of gods. I was talking with a guy Friday, and God just put him beside me, and he was messed up. And I got to talking with him, and he was writing a book, and he's writing a bunch of stuff, and some of it had some good points. I was trying not to destroy him, because I could tell he had some issues. And I said, you know the problem with that? He let me read somebody. I said, you know the problem with what you're writing? He said, what? I said, you've got a little bit of the truth and a whole lot of error. And that's where religion is today. All of these different gods, all of these different religions that want to step up and speak into your life. I've got truth to challenge the one true God and the God of the Bible. Because mankind does not want to have absolutes. Mankind wants to be able to make their own choices, which God gives us the power to make our own choices. But that's where people want it to stop. But we don't want to realize that our choices have consequences. And sin has consequences. And you could push God away and go your own way. He gives you that. But judgment always comes home. Margaret and I were discussing this just this week, and I said, you know, and I'm amazed that people have been raised in holiness and raised in Pentecost, what they are doing in their life, practicing in their life, that's so antithetical to what we teach. And I know it isn't because you don't hear it, because I preached it for 20-something years in this pulpit. It is you choose not to believe it. And because it's gotten popular to be a social drinker, or, you know, a little adultery don't matter anymore, just a little, if you just get a little bit. It's like being a little bit pregnant. It's just like, now I don't commit adultery about every 5 or 6 weeks. I'm tapering off. Well, somebody's going to bed with your wife. You want them to quit or you want them to taper off? Holiness doesn't matter anymore. I believe in Jesus and love. Just love in Jesus and faith. A lot more in this Bible than just love, Jesus, and faith. All those are wonderful teachings. But holiness of character and conduct. And just because we're under grace doesn't mean God's no less concerned about our holy living. If anything, because of the sacrifice of Calvary, we ought to be more conscientious about it. In that environment, the command was, you bow down to my God. I made this God. If you read, I'm not going to take time to read. I'm just reiterating the story because you know the story. And if you don't, I'll try to get it clearly to you. It says in the scriptures, if you don't worship the God that I have made. And we look at that and we say, oh my Lord, well, what God have you made? What's her name? What's his name? Is it the God of materialism? Or is it just the God of self? A God made in your image. Everybody bowed down. Nobody had any quarrel with it. After all, we're religious. I believe in God. I believe in God. Yeah, I believe in God. I don't believe in all that religion stuff. Not real sure about Jesus being the Son of God, but I believe in God. And that's the society we're in. I believe Jesus is the Son of God, but I'm a son of God, and you're the Son of God. And, but is he God in the flesh? Oh, no. And that's what I tried to help this man see. And so, here's the commandment. You bow down. Wasn't a suggestion. You will bow down. And that's what the world is telling us. You narrow-minded, Bible-thumping Christians, you will bow down to the God of this society, to the God of pluralism. You will be tolerant of the LGBT, WXYZ, QR459. You'll bow down to whatever I say. You will accept marriage as be what I define it. So I'm going to marry my goat. Or like the guy in Florida that sued the court to marry his computer full of pornography. Well, why not? When you redefine marriage, when you take God's laws and you redefine them, then anything can be acceptable to you until you face God in judgment. And so what they say to you and me, you're going to be tolerant. Not only are you going to be tolerant, you're going to accept my lifestyle as normal. And if you don't, I'm going to sue you. Society we live in. Well, actually today, you are whatever you identify as today, that's what you are. And you need to know that today, I'm a 9-foot-tall black Chinaman basketball player, and don't you tell me I'm not, because that's how I identify today. Don't laugh at me. I'll sue you. So you're going to make me a bathroom in this church that is said it's especially for 9-foot-tall black Chinaman basketball players. Softball players have to play somewhere else. That's how insane we are. In kindergarten in North Carolina, they're teaching transgenderism, lesbianism, the boy in the dress. And that's just one of them. And it's all being funded under the heading of anti-bullying teaching that is funded and promoted by Planned Parenthood. Teaching our young kids how to have oral sex, anal sex, masturbate themselves, and masturbate their friend. Oh yeah, matter of fact, there's a big rally against it tomorrow in Charlotte to try to get this turned around. Our society's gone mad. They demand the right to kill children in the womb. And some would kill them after they're born. Certainly us old people have reason to be concerned, especially when we can't get around much anymore. How a society treats life, they're young and they're old, says a lot about them. Here, now I'll tell you, when your child comes in from school and tells you these things and think you're old-fashioned because you're not hip, you know you're losing. There have to be some voices, no matter the pressure, that stand up and say, no, this is wrong, and I won't bow down. We'll take your tax exemption. We won't bow down. I've been called to stand for the truth, not be tax exempt. You are going to come under pressure to conform. They were commanded to bow down. And I want to tell you, no matter how many people are on the other side, nor how lavishly their religion and thought looks, and I'm sure that image was very impressive to look at, wrong is wrong, and false gods are false gods. So the command said, you will bow down. And if you don't, there will be consequences. And you need to understand there will be consequences for standing for righteousness. Peter said, don't think it's strange concerning the fiery trial that will try you. Jesus said, you would be hated for my sake. It don't make any. When I was in Chicago and I got involved in trying to stop gay rights legislation like San Francisco's being introduced into Chicago, and the new mayor got behind it and it was going through. Thank God, a little Plymouth Brethren pastor who served the city council took 2-page ads out, one in Sun Times, one in Trib, because they didn't think that the Christian community would have time to rally, but we fooled them. And within 2 weeks, we had that turned around with city council. First time it ever happened. That the pastors on the north side where I pastored and the black pastors on the south side got together, but we got together on that and we stopped it. And then they said, would you go down to Springville to the State House and lobby, help us overturn the governor's veto approving abortion? When I walked in that State House, I saw the out-of-the-closet lesbians had gathered. And nose to nose with them, I've never seen more hatred. If those women could have killed me and gotten away with it, they would have killed me on the spot because they hate what I stood for, and they hate righteousness. And you need to understand this. We're battling people. It's not just they've got a different opinion than you and me, or a different standard than you and me. They hate what we stand for. And because we stand for it, they hate us. And they want to eradicate it and eradicate you. And there will be consequences to stand for righteousness. And I know you think I'm just an old bearded guy, don't know what he's talking about, but because you were raised in the Bible Belt, don't be lulled to sleep. There are people in this community that are closet destruction to Christianity. Some of them not so closet, and some of them running for office. Then, as always is, here come the accusers. Verse 8, they came near and accused these two young men. You know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but they actually named Hananiah, which means Yah has favored. Mishael, which means who is what God is. And Azariah, Yah has helped. These three Hebrew boys. And they said, King, we're not even going to be careful to answer you. We don't have to take time to think about it. We settled that a long time ago. And you need to understand, we will not bow down nor serve your God. Our God is able to deliver us out of the fire. They didn't know he would. I don't think they knew he would until they got in there. That's just my opinion. But the consequences were heightened. The furnace heated up 7 times hotter than it had ever been before because the devil was so mad. And the guys who were probably the strongest guys in the court threw these 3 Hebrew boys in the fire and was immediately struck dead by the flames. But not these guys. And I believe you get to heaven, you ask God, he's going to tell you, Roger told you the truth. I don't think they knew they weren't going to burn till they got thrown in there. And when they got thrown in there, the fire had no effect on them, did not singe their clothes. When they came out, they didn't even have the smell of smoke on them. Now you need to understand, there are situations where you don't always get that kind of deliverance. But they have settled it in their mind that die or live, they would count that deliverance. He will deliver us out of your hand. You will not have power over us. If we die in the flames, we're going to glory. If we live, we're going to live for God's glory. But you're not going to control how we live. You see, all of this came to convergence and required a decision. The way you live your life, if you live it for God, if you have his provision and his deliverance, will require you to make a decision. And this is such an incredibly important decision that Jesus said you better count the cost to see if you could pay it, or see if you will pay it. Some won't. There are 3 references in the letters of Paul the Apostle to a man named Demas. 2 are very positive. He traveled with the evangelistic team of the Apostle Paul. But in Paul's last letter to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 4, I think it's verse 10, Paul writes to Timothy and says this, Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world. Many people have suggested what motivated him. Did he think he was too young? Did he think, I've got a lot of production left, and why should I die with Paul? I don't know. I can't obviously know his motivation. All I know is when it came down to crunch time, he sold out for this present world. And Judas sold him out for 30 pieces of silver. What's your price? Achan sold his relationship out with God for clothes he could not wear and money he could not spend. He couldn't afford to, because his sin would be instantly recognized. So he could hoard something in private he held on to, and it cost him his life and all of his family. You see, when we disobey, we're not the only one that gets hurt. We could take our entire family down. Dad, you could take your children down. Mother, you could take your children down. Because whether you believe it or not, they want to be like you until they realize you ain't so straight. And then they're going to have to make a decision. Do I want to be like them, or do I want to be different? Thank God some who have rotten parents with rotten examples choose to go the other way, but most do not. That baby comes into the world, and that dad is standing there, and you say he was just like you, and he may be as ugly as a mud fence, but he'll just grin from ear to ear with 1-2 teeth showing out. A few years later, when that kid gets up and making a decision, you tell that dad, that boy's just like you, he'll want to knock you down. Now, son, don't you do drugs, but you stop at the stop sign and your fifth rolls out from under the seat. Or don't smoke. Marijuana is bad for you, son, but not Marlboros. And so we bring into our home the Playboy channel and worse things, and wonder why our kids are constantly sexually stimulated. Oh, yeah. You're never taller, Dad, than when you're on your knees. We don't do it for show, but your kids need to know you get on your knees. And I don't know how many people I've heard say, I was just as rotten as hell itself, but I heard my mother calling my name in prayer, and it haunted me. Some of you are here today because a godly mother, a godly father, a grandfather, a grandmother held you up before the Lord when you were just wasn't fit to go.
Thank you for joining us today for Voice of Triumph. We invite you to check out our website at www.familyworship.org. There you will find information on our church service times, special events, purchase our books and music, and also information on becoming a partner as we continue to take the life-changing message of Jesus Christ to a hurting world. If you'd like to write us concerning our program, our address is The Voice of Triumph, P.O. Box 396, Kings Mountain, 28086, USA. On behalf of Pastor Woodard and the entire Family Worship Center team, God bless you, and we'll see you next week.